Today I'm on 2K26 and I'm going to become an agent for multiple athletes throughout the game. How I will be doing this is I'll be going into my GM mode and selecting the Kobe era to start in, which puts us in 2003. And from this point on, I'll be taking a player from each of the next 5 draft classes and doing what I can within my rights to make sure my client succeeds, which includes deciding where they sign, forcing them to be traded, tanking a season with a fake injury for a better draft pick, and many more possibilities. And for my agent career, my goals are to have an MVP, a champion, a finals MVP, a rookie of the year, and a Hall of Famer. If I don't succeed at least 4 of those things, well, the stakes are higher than ever. If I fail, then I won't be able to ask you to like and subscribe. Now, it wouldn't be much of a challenge to just choose the best player every year like LeBron and watch him dominate the league like usual. So instead, I'll be using a random wheel to choose a ranking of the prospect I can get at best, which will be according to their 2K big board rank. I will also be able to deploy some strategy here, as I will have to select which range I want my wheel to be within, and I will have to use the following ranges on screen one time each. So for example, let's say I do lottery only 1 through 14, I'll spin the wheel, and of course I used up all of my luck right away. It landed on 1, meaning I could have any player in the draft. Alright, so for a better example, I landed on 10 here, so that means I can't have any of the prospects from 1 through 9. Best case scenario, I could get TJ Ford. Now, there are usually some underrated selections here, like Kyle Korver, Nick Collison, Zaza. Yeah, this is a rough draft class outside of the top guys. Also, I'm not selecting fake players, so I can't save myself there either. Jumping forward a bit, I simulated through the 02-03 season, and the year finished with the Gilbert Arenas Warriors sweeping the Jordan Wizards in the finals. It's time to find out what prospect I can get for the 03 draft, and after a lot of thought, I decided to go with a wheel of 1 through 5. I'm praying for some luck here, but this way I think it'll be hard for me to fail here, while I can also keep the 1 through 3 wheel in my back pocket. I gave the wheel a big spin, and I landed on 5. Well, that's just great. I might have blown it. No one would ever know it if I restarted this, but I refuse. I'm gonna make this work. Alright, so it turns out Kirk Heinrich is the only reason my kids are going to be able to go to college, because somehow he is ranked higher than Chris Bosh. And I think that makes this a very easy decision for me. I didn't give a second thought to Chris Kaman or Boris Diaw. Bosh is my guy, and I'm going to make sure he's a Hall of Famer. The standings at the end of the year were pretty similar to the real results at the time, but the lottery mixed things up. The Sonics won the dynasty-changing #1 pick, the Heat are 2nd, the Nuggets are 3rd, and the Cavs fell to 4th. Somehow my client Chris Bosh has dropped to the projected 6th pick in the draft, but that would bring him to the Knicks, and I'm not mad at that. They're an aging team, but he might have a window here to compete for a championship, then we'll just skip down to the highest contending bidder. I started the draft, and just to be clear, I have no control of this, and neither do the Sonics. They don't want LeBron, they want Wade. From here, LeBron is going to the Heat, Melo to the Nuggets, and at number 4, the Cavs take my guy, Chris Bosh. Can't say I'm too excited about any of this, and I don't know if I can make this work here. These 03 Cavs needed Jesus himself, and Bosh is quite a few notches below that threshold. I had no part of this offseason, so I simmed to the start of the 04-05 season. And on the bright side of Bosh being in Cleveland, he is starting from day 1 and is already their 3rd best player. So the plan as of now is to milk out his potential as much as possible, and if they start to waste his career, we might be heading to South Beach too. However, he is signed to a 2-year deal with an additional 2-year team option, so unless I force a trade that the CPU accepts, we're stuck here for a while. After our first season, I'm not surprised that we didn't knock off the goal of winning Rookie of the Year, because LeBron is putting up near MVP numbers already. However, Bosh did make All-Rookie First Team alongside the Big 3 and Boris Diaw. But 17 points and 9 boards a game in his first season, can't be mad at that. And even better, somehow this Cavs team made the playoffs in his first year and are seeded 5th and matched up against the Jason Kidd Nets in the first round of the playoffs. I started to simulate the games 1 by 1 and the Cavs went down 3-2, so I decided to tune in to his first elimination game in which he's matched up with prime Kenyon Martin. In the 4th quarter, with a minute 45 left, it was tied 30-30, and Bosh looked like he was going to have his first big moment with a block, but he gets the rookie whistle. And I took a second look, and it couldn't get much cleaner than that, but that's just too bad because the challenge hasn't been invented yet. The Cavs are actually giving it to Bosh in the clutch, but he makes a bad pass, which Kidd takes to the other end to take a 3-point lead. These Cavs are still under the impression that they have the chosen one, so they force it back to him, and he scores inside. side. And with the shot clock off, down 1, the Cavs take a very Cavs-like shot, but the Big Z is there to save the day, and they take the lead with 5.5 seconds remaining. And that ends up winning them the game and forcing a Game 7, all while rookie Bosh led the way with 14 points in 5-minute quarters. Game 7 wasn't as dramatic, but the Cavs won on the road and are moving on to the second round to face the LeBron Heat, who has absolutely no help right now. So once again, the Bosh Cavs pull off the series upset, beating the Heat in 6. But the easy matchups are over now because in the Western Conference Finals, we have the Kobe and Shaq Lakers taking on the prime Duncan Spurs. And in the East, the Cavs have the champions of this year in real life, the 04 Pistons. The Cavs somehow took an early series lead but went down 3-2. I went in for a closer look and a close game, but with 15 seconds left, the game is tied and DeJuan Wagner goes for the dagger, but Ben Wallace sends it back and the Pistons take the lead with a fast break. There's 6.5 seconds left on the game clock, and thank God Wagner got it out of his hands this time, and it goes to Bosh, who scores over Boozer, and he ties the game up with 0.4 seconds left. That moment forced overtime, but from there, Ben Wallace was too much to handle for Big Z and rookie Bosh. The Pistons won Game 6, the series, and the finals after taking down the Lakers in 7. I was expecting a bottom 4 finish for the Cavs, not a top 4. I think they would have been better off tanking, but I can't be mad at the success Bosh has had in his first year. But it is now time to move my focus into the next draft, and this isn't the best one ever. It's headlined by Dwight Howard, but there isn't much else here to be honest. So I'm gonna bite this bullet now. I'm taking the 1 through 60 wheel and dealing with the consequences later. And that's gonna land on 23. I'm not mad at that at all. The 23rd ranked prospect in this draft is Grant Williamson, who isn't a real player, but good God, what a steal right under that, Josh Smith. At 29 is Ben Gordon. We've got Kevin Martin at 34. But there was another man who caught my eye, who some of you younglings might have taken for a fake player at first glance. This year is supposed to give me my worst prospect anyway, and he has the highest potential out of all the guys I'm looking at. And you know what, Josh Childress? I haven't forgotten about you. I wasn't conscious enough to remember his playing career myself, but for some reason this man and his afro is engraved in my brain. Some may call him a bust, a realtor, or even worse. But I'm going to call him my client and do everything I can to help him rewrite his NBA career. I had no clue where he was going to fall in this draft, but apparently his stock was on the rise because Josh Childress went number 11 to none other than the defending champs, the Detroit Pistons. And he is in a very good situation here in Detroit because not only is this a solid team, but he is also the best shooting guard on the team since there are no others there to compete with. Meanwhile, Chris Bosh made a modest jump to an 83 overall, and somehow that was enough to give him third-team All-NBA honors in his second year in the league. Based on playing time alone, Josh Childress made all-rookie second team. Bosh averaged 20 and 11 in his second year, but he did miss 21 games to a broken arm. And that'll be just enough for the Cavs to go back to reality and miss the playoffs after making the conference finals a year prior. Now, I don't think this is Josh's doing at all, but he's riding the coattails over here in Detroit, and I couldn't be happier for him. They finished first in the East with a 56 and 26 record, but I wasn't able to check the champion box off yet because after beating the Knicks in 5, they lost to the Wally Zerback Bulls in 6, who went on to beat the LeBron Heat and lose to the Spurs in the finals. The 05 draft is coming up, and this is another draft year to forget for the most part. Chris Paul is the crown jewel here by a wide margin. From there, it's Danny Granger and Marvin Williams at 2 and 3. So I think I'm going to knock out another worst wheel remaining with 1 through 30, and that's going to leave us at number 12. So again, I'm getting lucky, but we're going to have to see what we can get. At 12 is Marcelo Huertas, who, to be honest, I didn't think was a real player. Right away, Raymond Felton at 14 caught my eye. Monte Ellis at 17 isn't bad. Villanueva at 19 seems like a steal. We've also got Lou Williams and Marvin Gortat. I feel like I've been getting a little too lucky with these wheels, and I need to put some good back into the universe, so you know what? I'm going to take just the 30th best prospect in this draft with Lou Williams. It may not be the smartest move here, but if he can keep jumping teams at the tail end of his career, I might just get a ring out of it eventually. And in the draft lottery, Bosh's Cavs are in it and are going to do all right for themselves with the 3rd pick. Definitely could have used number 1 for CP3, but number 3 might save the franchise from an early Bosh departure. And with that pick, they're taking Danny Granger, which might be great, might not make a difference. Time will tell. And at the 11th pick, out of nowhere, the Cavs will also take Lou Williams. I was planning on pairing up some of my guys eventually, but it looks like the Cavs are going to do it for me, which is probably another desperate plea to keep Bosh there for 20 years. And the Pistons made some moves without me in the offseason. They took Wally, who just beat them with the Bulls last year, and made him the starting small forward. But don't you worry, Josh Childress' job is still safe. He's somehow still the starting shooting guard. And the Cavs have something going too. They traded DeJuan Wagner and some change for Dunleavy in that number 3 pick. So they now have 4 80 overall players alongside with rookie Lou Will starting at point guard. In year 3 for Bosh, his numbers are getting a little stagnant, but he is averaging career highs in points and rebounds. The Cavs franchise-saving number 3 pick Danny Granger hasn't had the best start to his career so far. He tore his ACL 21 games into the season, so that's not ideal. And Lou, what the hell? He only played 27 games this year because he dislocated his patella. That's not winning basketball, mister. But you know who's healthy as a horse? Josh Childress played 73 games and averaged 11. So once again, the Cavs will not make the playoffs after winning just 35 games, but the Pistons, on the other hand, 65-17, league best. My Josh Childress Pistons were destined to make a run this year, and they had an easy time getting past the Pacers in the first round, but then they lost to the Hawks in 6, who have absolutely nobody on their team. I mean, what are they doing? They lost to prime Jason Terry and Channing Frye? What is this? Well, the Spurs are going to win again, and I still have yet to cross off any of my goals throughout my career. I'm running out of opportunities to get a Rookie of the Year, let alone a future MVP, but I have 2 more drafts to do it and a wheel of 1 through 14 and 1 through 3 remaining. And this 06 draft isn't the worst, but honestly, I don't want any of the guys in the top 3, so there's no reason to have my wheel be 1 through 3. So I'm spinning with 1 through 14, and it's landing on 5, which I am very lucky to get, because 5 through 8 is where all the best players are here. At number 5, we have Brandon Roy, who, if healthy, is a Hall of Famer. Rondo is at 6, LaMarcus Aldridge at 7, and even Paul Millsap at 8 is a good pick. But again, I'm not going to take the best player available or the one with the highest potential. Honestly, I'm picking my favorite player here out of the bunch, and that's going to be Rajan Rondo, who is heading to the Denver Nuggets with the 7th pick. I like my odds of him being a champion, maybe a finals MVP, and I think we can turn him into a Hall of Famer. He's also heading into a pretty sweet situation here in Denver. I don't know how they did bad enough to get him, but they have young Melo up to a 92 overall. They have Baron Davis, which might be an awkward fit alongside Rondo, but he can play the 1 or 2 and is an 87 overall. And they have a pretty nice roster outside of that. In the offseason, every one of my clients got extended with her team deals, but I have just 1 more draft remaining and I'm already taking a look ahead. I can't do worse than 3 for this one since I saved the 1 through 3 wheel, and getting KD here would make my career. He could probably check off all the boxes himself. This is also such a nice draft, I can't fail. We have Marc Gasol at 4, Joakim Noah at 7, and Mike Conley at 8. Hell, we even have 5'10" Patrick Ewing in this class at 14. I went and took a look at the rotations for the Nuggets, and if they're willing to start 76 overall Ben Gordon, I don't see why I can't convince them to start Rondo. So I made a couple phone calls, and 76 overall Rondo is now the starting point guard, and this looks like a team that is ready to contend, if not now, at least in the near future. The Pistons are also looking mighty stacked. They're still contending, and I don't know how he keeps getting away with this, but Josh Childress is still starting without me getting involved. And the Cavs, well, they're still the Cavs. But in year 4, I finally have an all-star under my belt with Chris Bosh, barely making the cut for the East. And somehow he's just stat padding so much in Cleveland, he made first-team All-NBA, which is going to look great on the Hall of Fame ballot. I'm a bit surprised Rondo didn't make first-team All-Rookie, but second-team isn't bad. But I have to say I'm a bit disappointed that he only averaged 8 points and 6 assists while starting all year. And for the end of the year standings, once again, the Pistons are first in the East with 57 wins. The Cavs are somehow back in the race. They won 49 games and finished 6th. And they might be glad they did, because Bosh is a restricted free agent after this, and anything might happen with his agent. And I went 3 for 3 this year. The Nuggets won 42 games and finished 7th in the West. And even though 2 of my teams are underdogs, the 7-seed Nuggets won their first round matchup, and so did the 6-seed Cavs, who once again are holding back LeBron's career. Of all the second round matchups, I expected the Cavs to get past the Tyson Chandler Bulls, but they were the first to go. The Rondo Nuggets are taking on the Spurs, who have been dominating the league with their big 3 of prime Tony Parker, Sean Marion, and Tim Duncan. But somehow the Nuggets went up 3-2 in this series and finished strong in Game 6 by blowing them out at home. In the East, the Pistons made it past the 76ers, who have prime former Finals MVP Gilbert Arenas and Allen Iverson. So at this point, I now have a team in each of the conference finals and have my best chance yet to win a ring. The Nuggets are facing KG, who has no help on the Timberwolves, and the Pistons are facing the Bulls, who aren't great, yet they somehow always overperform in the playoffs. But this time was different because the Pistons have been building up their roster for this challenge and advanced to the finals after beating the Bulls in 5. I could guarantee myself my first ring if the Nuggets can advance, but they went down 3-2. I got my first look at Rondo in Game 6, who had some nice moves in his bag, but still can't make an open jump shot. And you just know things aren't going great when we're giving KG a standing ovation for his record-breaking performance in an elimination game. So KG ended up taking out Rondo's Nuggets, but to be fair, they overperformed in these playoffs by a great deal. In my first finals, I don't have a chance in hell of my guy getting finals MVP, at least so I think, because Josh Childress is the weak point on this otherwise terrific team. Once again, my guy's team went down 3-2 against KG and the Timberwolves, so I took a closer look for Game 6. They had a 3-point lead with 23 seconds remaining, but KG hit a tough fadeaway to make it a 1-point game. We should have this in the bag, but first, my very own Josh Childress has to hit the biggest free throws of his career. He stepped up to the line and shit his pants, 0 for 2. Great. The Timberwolves now have a chance to steal this game and win the finals, and with less than 10 seconds to go, KG attacked Boozer and drew the shooting foul at the basket. I took a closer look, but even if I could review this, I definitely wouldn't. That was a blatant foul by Boozer. Thankfully, KG went 1 for 2 and this game is heading to overtime. And in overtime, Kyle Korver came in off the bench and put the Pistons ahead while the Timberwolves played hack-a-shack on my own Josh Childress, who is apparently a 53 overall free throw shooter. I don't know how that's even possible. I looked it up and for his career, he shot 78%. What did he ever do to 2K to deserve this? The Pistons were lucky to make it to Game 7, but it became clear to me that it was time for me to step in. Josh Childress has been starting over Kyle Korver all this time because technically Korver is a small forward first, but after a tough phone call with my client, we decided to bench him for an ultra important Game 7. And that turned out to be just the thing the Pistons needed to blow out the Timberwolves at home and win the NBA Finals. Josh definitely isn't winning Finals MVP for his performance here, but somehow my worst player has completed my first goal yet by winning a championship even as one of the worst court players on the roster. But a ring is a ring. He's even in the cutscenes. Chauncey Billups was the Finals MVP, and in this Game 7, just as I predicted, Korver led Game 7 in scoring, while Childress put up his usual 9 points. It's time for the final draft I'll be a part of. The Hawks have the #1 pick, followed by the Grizzlies, Warriors, Hornets, and Bucks. I spun my final wheel, which is by default just 1 through 3, and it landed on number 2, which only means I can't sign Kevin Durant. I can have Greg Oden at 2, who is considered an all-time bust because of his injuries, but his potential ceiling is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Even his floor of Nate Thurman is a Hall of Famer. That might be a gamble worth taking, and I think the risk is going to be worth the reward here, at least so I hope. My final client is going to be Greg Oden, and with the number 2 pick, Oden is heading to Memphis. In free agency, Josh Childress and Lou Williams had their team options extended, and Chris Bosh is in a restricted free agency, which, if you don't know, means any team in the league can offer him a contract, but his original team can match the money of an offered deal he wants to sign, and then he's forced to sign back to the Cavs. But I am highly considering pulling off a sign-and-trade operation here, as Cleveland hasn't been working out too well for my client, and I don't see it improving. At this point, he has had quite the start as far as his personal accolades go, but to lock him in as a Hall of Famer, he needs to have playoff success. And after just 1 day of free agency, Bosh was ready to agree to a 3-year deal with the Cavs. His loyalty might be too high for his own good, but I think we're going to work on getting him out of here either way. He also just took a big jump in overall again to 87, but these Cavs don't look awful, so I'll give them a few months and see how they're doing. Rondo made a huge jump. He's an 81 overall as well. Melo also went up 2 overalls, and the Nuggets took Kyle Korver from the defending champs. And I get it. For some reason, that Josh Childress guy just kept starting in front of him. At the start of the season, I looked into Memphis's rotation. The good thing is Greg Oden is starting as a rookie. The bad thing is this team has no sense of direction. They have stockpiled big men, and there's no way to start all of them. I simulated through half of the season, and the Cavs weren't doing too well, so my client and I demanded a trade out of Cleveland. I'm only allowing myself to trade Bosh to one of these trade finder deals. I did study some good fits for him at this point, but then the Nuggets offered me a pretty sweet package on the Nuggets side of things. And Rondo and Bosh plus Melo seems like a pretty great big 3 to me. Of course, I highly considered trading him to the Heat to pair up with LeBron at the cost of Andre Miller and an 09 pick. Surely they'd win a championship together eventually, but I'm gonna stick with my guns and my guys and send him to the Nuggets. I did kind of screw Lou Will in the process by leaving him in Cleveland, but Bosh and I have bigger mountains to climb. And in Bosh's first year in Denver, he was still a first-team All-NBA player, so statistically, everything seems to be working out fine. What isn't fine is that my Rookie of the Year goal is never going to be completed. This was my last chance to do it, and my number 2 pick, Greg Oden, finished just second-team All-Rookie. He played 76 games, but I think he's been playing through some injuries, although I'm going to blame this 3-center system they have going on in Memphis. The Nuggets did not improve standings-wise from last year's conference finals run. They placed 7th again with 43 wins, and they looked like they were about to make another 7-seed run, but they ended up losing in the first round to the Trailblazers. The Pistons finished in 4th, which ends their 3-year streak of being first in the East, and they also lost in the first round after the Raptors swept them. The Knicks beat the Trailblazers for the championship this year, being led by a few guys I passed up on, like Josh Smith and Chris Kaman, who are in a pretty sweet situation. But it turns out I was in the process and I just didn't know it. Because in the offseason, the Grizzlies got themselves the number 1 pick, and after Bosh's departure, the Cavs got themselves the 2nd. And joining Greg Oden in Memphis is none other than Derrick Rose. And taking Lou Will's job in Cleveland is Russell Westbrook. I had another successful free agency as all my team option guys were extended, and Josh Childress was offered a qualifying offer which we gladly accepted. We're robbing the Pistons for $32 million over the next 4 years, which in late 2000s money is quite a bit. Bosh is starting to level out now. He went up 1 to an 88 overall, but Rondo is having another big progression and is now an 85 overall. Even though Greg Oden has been the biggest disappointment so far, he had my highest overall increase yet in this offseason. He went up 7 overalls to an 86, and I'm starting to think Pau Gasol needs to get out of his way. With LaMarcus Aldridge as a young 85 overall coming off the bench in Memphis, I'm going to use all my influence on this team and demand the Grizzlies to trade him behind his back. Oden GM is in full effect, and I think I found a pretty fair trade for both sides with the Suns. The Grizzlies will be getting 27-year-old Joe Johnson to start at shooting guard and get out of Aldridge's way, while the Suns get the best player out of the deal in Pau Gasol while Joe gets out of Vince Carter's way. And apparently this deal made the Grizzlies one of the worst teams in the league, even though I think they look perfect. But it turns out, what a year to be tanking, because this 09 draft class is loaded with Hall of Famers. And even though the Grizzlies did awful this year, Derrick Rose still won Rookie of the Year, averaging 21 and 6. And an award I definitely was not planning for is the Most Improved Player, but somehow Greg Oden got it in year 2. He only increased 3 points per game, but he's up 5 rebounds and he surpassed 2 blocks a game. Finally, the Nuggets have improved upon 7th place. They're up to 4th in the West with 50 wins, while the Josh Childress Pistons are still hanging around at 5th in the East. But once again, the Nuggets lost their first round matchup. The Pistons came back after being down 3-1 to the Celtics, just to be swept by the Knicks, which, to be fair, they just finished as back-to-back champions. And oh my god, I might have failed my way into success with the Grizzlies. My trade was apparently so bad that we got ourselves the number 1 pick once again. God damn it, they want Blake Griffin. We have 2-star big men already. Enough is enough. But apparently they were just putting out some fake news, because on draft night they took none other than Stephen Curry. We do already have a Rookie of the Year point guard at Rose, but we can make this work. In free agency, all I had to deal with was Lou Will. He was offered by the Cavs, and I'm going to take no part in his signings. He can go wherever he wants. He's a journeyman, and that'll take him to Toronto this year, meaning my time in Cleveland is officially over. And progression wise, it seems like everyone is starting to reach their peak in Denver. Rondo is up to an 87, while Bosh is up to an 89. In Memphis, Greg Oden is up to a 90 overall, and it looks like this team is going to own the league soon. I fear I have created a super team for as long as they can afford it. And in the 2010 season, while my Nuggets were in their prime, they missed the playoffs by 2 games. But I don't know if I can blame them, considering my super team Grizzlies also missed out, finishing just 13th in the West. The Pistons made it in as a 6th seed, but everyone's too old there, so they lost to the LeBron Heat in the first round, who went on their best run yet, but lost to the Jason Richardson Warriors in 7. And poor LeBron still needs help. He has 3 MVPs, 5 Defensive Player of the Years at just 25, and he's still a one-man army with no rings. And I guess I'm just going to keep trusting the process for the Grizzlies for my own greed. With the 6th pick in the 2010 draft, they did it again, drafting Paul George. In free agency, Melo, Bosh, Bosh and Rondo were all entering unrestricted free agency, Bosh and Melo both declined their player options to do so, which as a YouTuber gave me a heart attack, but as Bosh's agent, I was very proud of him. He just wanted more money. The Denver Big Three all re-signed for 5 years, which gives us a pretty clear window for this team to win a championship and therefore make Bosh a Hall of Famer. Lou Will is still in a much different situation. The Raptors let him go and he was willing to just go to the highest bidder. That ended up being the Mavs, which is an excellent choice given that this roster of Dirk and Nash are definitely contending, and 2011 is a year they won it. And the progression for the Grizzlies team is just ridiculous. Oden is a team high 93, Rose is up to 92, Curry and Aldridge are 88, and Joe Johnson is still in 86 while Paul George has time to improve. During the 2011 season, Josh Childress was up for an extension. I could offer it here myself, but it's not my place to do so, and honestly, I wouldn't mind if he got out of here while the Pistons are declining and he's still in his 81 overall prime. After the season ended, Rondo got his first big award with an all-defensive first-team selection, while Oden did the same. And checking in on Josh Childress, he was offered an extension and he took it for another 2 years in Detroit. And this ended up being my best postseason yet. My 3 Western Conference teams finished 3rd through 5th, while only the Pistons failed to make the playoffs. We also have a possible rivalry brewing that I have created with my own bare hands. The Grizzlies and Nuggets are matched up against each other in the first round, and I had to go see some of this myself. Greg Oden was a man amongst boys, one of them being my very own Chris Bosh. Early on in the game, he was dominating the paint on both ends. But to be fair, Bosh got a few buckets of his own, which ended up tying this game at 27 late in the 4th quarter. For the lead, Rose cooked Rondo and hit the jumper, but Rondo responded immediately with a nice assist to Melo at the rim. But in the end, Curry is going to find Aldridge for the go-ahead bucket with 1.3 seconds remaining, and the Grizzlies take game 1 after Melo missed his bucket 3. The Grizzlies then go up 3-1. I was about to let it ride, but the Nuggets fought their way back for a Game 7. But that ended up being a blowout in the Simcast, and the Grizzlies might have just arrived. They went on to make it to the Western Conference Finals to face the Lou Will Mavs, who have a very solid team, which on top of Nash and Dirk, also include an 85 overall fake player and a young Kevin Love coming off the bench. The Mavs took a 3-1 lead in the series, but the Grizzlies won back-to-back games in the Simcast to force another Game 7. I hopped in late in the game, tied up at 41 with less than a minute to go. Rose misses a shot here, but Big Oden is one of the best rebounders in the league. And on the other end, Rose blocks Nash at the rim, and that'll do it. The Grizzlies are heading to the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. And I have a great chance at getting a Finals MVP for Oden here, considering he's the best player on the team by overall. But then they got swept. Yeah, apparently New York is just rubble and ashes in this timeline because they've won 3 out of the last 4 championships. There's not too much work to be done in this offseason. Greg Oden was a restricted free agent and signed back with the Grizzlies on a 3-year deal. The Grizzlies continue to dominate early on in the 2012 season. The Nuggets, not so much. Melo has been out with a broken kneecap. The Grizzlies finished 2nd in the West, winning 56 games, but due to Melo's injuries, the Nuggets missed the playoffs by a long shot, winning only 24. The Pistons also made a comeback to make the playoffs, but both of my teams lost in the first round this year, including the former Western Conference winners of last year. The Grizzlies were upset by the 7-seed Kings in 6. The Bucks beat the Blazers for the championship, and thanks to the downfall of Melo, the Nuggets have the 5th pick in a decent 2012 draft, which they used to draft Draymond Green. Definitely an interesting pick, but we have been in need of another big man to pair alongside Bosh. There was no work to be done in the offseason, and I checked in on the Nuggets to see how they were doing, and once again, things aren't great. Bosh is out 6 to 8 weeks with a severe ankle sprain, and their top 5 pick Draymond Green has already torn his Achilles. And to add on to the already pretty rough year for my agency, Josh Childress also tore his Achilles. However, the super team Grizzlies are in great shape. They once again finished 2nd in the West, and they ended up just plowing through everyone in their path. They lost 2 games all playoffs and beat the Celtics in 5 to win their first championship in franchise history. But Josh Childress has already done this for me. I need a Finals MVP more than anything, but Oden doesn't get it. It goes to Curry. Oden averaged a nice 12 points and 14 boards for the Finals, but that didn't come close to Curry's 34 points and 8 assists. While the Grizzlies are at the top of the league, the Nuggets are at the bottom somehow, but maybe they're just in the middle of a process because they secured the number 2 pick after another awful year. They were projected to take Cody Zeller, but thank God they had second thoughts on that, because instead they took Giannis Antetokounmpo out of nowhere. There were no deals to be made in the offseason, but at the start of the season, Chris Bosh was up for an extension, and I just offered it to him. I want him to be here. I still trust the process, especially since Giannis just joined. And signing him to another 3 years at 33 years of age pretty much means he's gonna finish his career here. Meanwhile, Melo's hurt once again. At this rate, if he keeps breaking bones, maybe the Nuggets will just tank their way into becoming the next Grizzlies. Josh Childress is also up for extension, but at 30 years of age, he has a ruptured left Achilles, and I'm not going to offer it to him myself. We've made plenty of money in the league together, but it might be time for him to start becoming a family man. This year, the Grizzlies finished first in the West for the first time with 59 wins. The Nuggets are finally back in the playoff race at 7th, and the Mavs are still hanging around at 5th. The Mavs were eliminated by the Rockets in the first round. The Grizzlies swept as expected, but the Nuggets are back to their old ways of advancing in the playoffs as a 7 seed. I wasn't too worried about the Grizzlies and their matchup, but the Nuggets had 95 overall Kobe plus Kemba Walker in their way. But both of my teams took care of business and are matched up once again in the Western Conference Finals. This one was heading to a Game 7, and in the very first play, Melo tried putting Oden on a poster, but he stood firm. Bosh was showing that he still had finesse in his game and was putting up some early points, but Big Oden was going to work thanks to pure size and strength. The last play I saw before simcasting was Paul George putting a few guys on a poster, so it seems like their bench depth is fine too. And during the sim, the Grizzlies ran away with this one and are moving on to the finals for the second year in a row, where they handedly beat the former champion Bucks in 6. But finally, I got one. Greg Oden was the finals MVP this time, assuming one of my guys will make the Hall of Fame. Now all I need is an MVP, and I can rightfully so beg you for a like and subscribe. And there's no way Oden isn't set to be a Hall of Famer, considering he joined the equivalent of the 1960s Celtics. The only thing that can stop this team really is the payroll. They're already in the luxury tax, and they have quite a few guys up for some contracts soon. I don't know how Memphis is cashing their checks, but they did it again. They matched Paul George's contract and signed him to another 3-year deal. For the first time yet, my progression menu is more of a regression menu. At 34 years of age, Bosh has gone down 2 overalls to an 87. Melo and Giannis need to hurry up and win this Unca ring. And it took some looking around, but it turns out the Pistons let Childress go, but he still signed a 3-year deal with the 76ers, who are actually looking like future contenders. And this man continues to amaze me. He is once again the best shooting guard on the team, yet he can't shoot a free throw. He's turned into a vet with championship experience at this point, but that's more than I could have ever asked for. And as you can see, the 76ers have a promising player on their hands with the Rookie of the Year this year, Nikola Jokic. I still haven't won an MVP yet since LeBron's been hogging them all, but Oden with a Defensive Player of the Year is a step in the right direction. Oden's accolades look like a first ballot Hall of Famer already. An MVP would definitely put him over the edge, or a few more championships would do. And for Bosh, I'm a little unsure. I feel like I've put him in the right situation to succeed. He has multiple first-team All-NBAs, which pull a lot of weight for the Hall of Fame, but I think a ring would absolutely get him over the hump. And this was my best year all around yet. The Grizzlies finished first in the West once again, but right behind them, just 3 games back, are the Nuggets. 10 years in the making, they're starting to figure it out. And even the Mavs are still hanging around in 5th, but just as I'm thinking we'll get another rivalry matchup between my big dogs, everyone gets eliminated in the first round. So that's just great. This 2015 offseason got interesting, especially for the Nuggets. They let Draymond Green go, who has done absolutely nothing for them since being drafted 5th and immediately tearing his Achilles. Then they turned around and let Melo walk too, but not for nothing. In return, they're signing Klay Thompson to a 3-year deal. Melo's been getting old and keeps falling down the stairs or something. He's been breaking all sorts of bones, so I'm not mad at that, and instead we get a healthy young star that will also allow Giannis to take over. I like it a lot. And my Cleveland curse continues because Melo decided to join the enemy and link up with prime Russell Westbrook. That's going to be stat pad city over there. And the timeline for the Nuggets is running out because Bosh is going to take a big drop again and is down to an 84 overall, which returns him to the level of his second-year self. And even Oden is regressing at 27, but I think the Grizzlies will be fine. I don't know if the Nuggets are back to tanking or what, but they missed the playoffs after being the 2 seed last year. The Grizzlies are just untouchable. They finished first again. And in the East, the Josh Childress Sixers are 3rd while the Melo Cavs are 1st. But we are truly in the Grizzlies era now for as long as they can afford it. Once again, they cruised through the playoffs and this time took out the Hornets in the finals. They beat them so badly, only the made-up benchwarmers were shown shown in the cutscenes. But the Nuggets didn't embarrass themselves for nothing. They got a nice selection in the draft by taking DeJounte Murray with the 8th pick. And Bosh is really running out of time now, but Giannis has finally arrived. At 22 years of age, he's a 93 overall, and this team currently has 3 90 overall players, so they should be able to win it if they just work as a team, and Bosh wraps his knees in ice every second he's off the court. And speaking of, Josh Childress is probably on his last leg too. He's down to a 72 overall at 33, and after checking in on the Grizzlies this season, the door is open for the rest of the league. Derrick Rose has broken his leg, which normally I would never celebrate, but as Bosh's agent, hooray. Also, this is a perfect opportunity for Greg Oden to stat pad for an MVP, but instead Paul George took it, while Oden was one of 3 Grizzlies to make first team All-NBA. Broken pedals and all, the Grizzlies still finished first in the West, but the Nuggets are back in second place. With Curry and Rose out for the playoffs, this is the Nuggets' time to shine. They lost in the first round. Again. And in the offseason, it's looking like a wrap for Josh Childress. He's an unrestricted free agent and has 0 offers. Good God, my Nugget stars are falling from grace. Rondo dropped 2 and Bosh dropped 4, and is now the worst version of himself he has ever been in the league. If he retired instead, I wouldn't have blamed him. He's 37 and just blatantly ring chasing. And I'm not confident that Denver is the right place for it. And at the end of the 2018 season, for the 5th time in a row, the Grizzlies are in first, the Nuggets are in 4th, but 53 wins is pretty good. And in Bosh's likely last playoff run of his career, he's entering it out for 1 to 2 weeks with a twisted right knee. And Oden is also dealing with some injuries himself. He broke his leg, but he's champing it and making a return soon. For the first round, both the Grizzlies and Nuggets sweep and are matched up against each other in the second round in Bosh's last year. And once again, the Nuggets take a 3-1 lead against the Grizzlies, but they have blown it before. I checked in on Game 5 to see if the Nuggets could really do it this time, and with less than 2 minutes to go, they had a 4-point lead, but Clay put them up 6 with a beautiful fadeaway jumper over Aldridge. Big Oden made it a 2-point game from here with back-to-back putbacks, and with 24 seconds left, up 2, Klay Thompson hits the dagger to give them a 5-point cushion, which allowed them to beat the Grizzlies for the first time since this super team formed. My guys may have not been leading the way, but 40-year-old Chris Bosh still showed up on one leg today. He held his own with a 15-10 performance. And after beating the Chris Paul Jazz in 7, they made it to the finals for the first time in Bosh and Rondo's career and are facing none other than the Detroit Pistons, who still have Carlos Boozer, who joined them the day after Bosh was drafted. I simulated through some games and they went down 3-2 in the series. This can't be happening. I simcasted Game 6 and they narrowly won this one, and in Game 7 they were blowing them out on the road, as they should. They are much better. They've always been elite. They just hate to perform like it. But after all the heartbreak, broken bones, the Draymond Green experience, they have finally won it all and have ended Chris Bosh's career in a beautiful way. Chris Bosh finished his 15-year career as a 4-time All-Star with 5 first-team All-NBA selections and a 1-time champion. The Nuggets rightfully so retired his jersey, but most importantly, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Josh Childress, on the other hand, did not get his jersey retired or make the Hall of Fame, but he was a champion and a top 10 rookie in 2005, so there's that. Lou Will's retirement shocked the basketball world just about as much as Childress's did. After 15 years and 5 teams, he retired without a single accolade to his name. But he made a lot of money and gave a lot of it back to the community, and finished as a top 5,000 basketball player of all time. Rondo stayed with the Nuggets for 3 more years past Bosh's retirement, but didn't have too much to show for it. Eventually, his starting position was overtaken by DeJounte Murray, and he became more of a locker room presence. Another ring or two would have definitely helped him make the Hall of Fame, but the Grizzlies weren't going to allow that to happen. He retired as a 1-time NBA champion and a 7-time first-team All-Defensive player. The Nuggets hung his jersey up in the rafters alongside Bosh's, but he was a few achievements short of making the Hall of Fame. And then there was Greg Oden, who found himself in the best situation possible for his entire career. After losing to the Nuggets in 2018, they won the championship in the following year, and in 2021, some say they would have three-peated if not for playing in the bubble in 2020. Even though he never won me the MVP I needed, he went above and beyond my expectations and stayed healthy long enough to have the longest career out of all my clients. He finished his career with 5 championships, 1 finals MVP, and as it turns out, his most impressive accolade of all was his 2015 Defensive Player of the Year, because it broke LeBron's would-have-been streak of winning it 16 years in a row. Normally, I would describe poor body health in this game as lighting up like a Christmas tree, but by the end of Oden's career, it looked like a stop sign. But even after many nights in the ER and thousands upon thousands of painkillers later, he ended his career as not only my best client, but also a top 25 player of all time. And he can thank my god-awful Pau Gasol trade and my 5% cut for that. But that's going to do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.